Hello, everyone, and welcome to webinar number 4 in the series of 6. Lovely to be with you again. It's myself, Ben, and Charlie. If you've been with us for the previous 3 webinars, hopefully you're not too exhausted of the sound of our voices. Charlie's got the lovely kind of Scottish lilt, so hopefully that kind of tempers my Midland twang when it comes up. Thank you so much for joining us. So thank you we've got Portsmouth, Stockport already. And I'm sure many more people to represent the rest of the UK and Ireland. So it's really exciting to be here. Today is Google Classroom focused. So kind of feel like really getting into the meaty parts of why many of you are using Google for education tools. I imagine a lot of that is centered around Google Classroom. So hopefully it's going to be a really useful one for you today. Charlie, I know obviously Google Classroom was probably a fairly fundamental part of the offering over lockdowns in Aberdeen, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely, Ben. It's our kind of mission control for learning and teaching. It's a place that we all go to where our students know to go to get all the resources and all the support they need around digital learning, and where our staff go to as well. It's a fantastic tool to support learning and education, and yeah, it's absolutely critical in our both in terms of our support during lockdown, but also critically, ongoing into the future. It's going to be a major part of how we ensure that engagement going forward and that support going forward, and that all young people know that it's the best place to go and get their resources from their class teacher. So great, really fantastic tool.
And I'm sure many people who are watching and who subsequently watch this have used Classroom quite a lot, at least over the last 12 months, if not more than that. But what I do often find in my role nowadays as a trainer rather than a maths teacher is that I will quite often work with schools and they feel like they're using Classroom in its entirety and will unlock a lot of other potential bits they didn't know were there. So apart from Darren, who's just said hello, I'm sure many other people, hopefully we've got lots of extra little tips for you to get even more usage out of your Google Classroom, even if you are using it every day. So hopefully lots for you to have a look at there. So thank you for everyone that said hi. Once again, great representation from across the UK and Ireland. And it's nice to see from Elizabeth that the weather is very similar in Dublin as it is where I am as well.
Yeah. I've still to see someone from Scotland on there, Ben, but I'm sure it's going to happen.
Oh, come on. They're just being quiet, aren't they? So let's have a look at what we've got coming up today. So obviously this series of webinars is looking at Google Workspace for Education, and in particular the Google for Education Fundamentals, Standard Plus, and the Teaching and Learning Upgrade, which have been put in place to try and provide a bit more choice, control and flexibility. And the usage has gone very, very high. It was at a very good level before COVID and the lockdown, and obviously it has skyrocketed since then. So over 170 million people engaging with Google Workspace for Education. So we want to make sure that you get the best out of the tools. So just a reminder about those additions: the Fundamentals is the free tools. Education Standard is your advanced security and analytics tools for that insight that Charlie talked about in the previous webinar, and we'll be going into in terms of a bit more device-related focus. You got the Teaching and Learning Upgrade, which is obviously a big part of what I'll be talking about today. And if you want all of that and a little bit more, then there is Google Workspace for Education Plus. And just a reminder to reach out to your partners if you want to get information about pricing and getting on a trial, for example. So you can get 60 days, 50 license trial up and running for any of those SKUs if you want to try it out before buying. Okay. Try to do that one a little bit quicker because I know many of you will have seen that before. Still not seeing anyone. Oh, we have a Glasgow representative, Charlie. Just spotted that one.
Excellent. Great. Hello, Mr. Baden.
So we're going to have a look at some classroom features today. In particular, we're going to look at sort of originality reports. So that's freely available as well as being part of the upgrade where you can get unlimited originality reports. We're going to look at rubrics, and we're going to look at how you can expand the use of Google Classroom across your team. But what I want to quickly do is do a little recap on some of the wider updates around Google Classroom, and we'll just make sure that we loop back to these at the end. So you may have noticed in the first webinar we talked about Classroom audit logs in the admin console, so being able to check instances of what's going on in Classroom. If you've got Education Plus or the Teaching and Learning upgrade, then you'll be able to start using BigQuery to pull out big chunks of data and manage that data through a Data Studio template, so you can really get insights into what's going on in Classroom. And then also roster sync, so syncing your existing rosters with Classroom. Classroom add-ons is coming later in the year. We've said later in the year. More specifically, that's going to be around back to school time, as is improved mobile grading for teachers and the ability for better image capture and sharing on mobile for students. Rich text formatting is already in place. There's more languages for originality reports, and there's some really good CS First compatibility. Not something we're looking at today, but just a reminder, if you are looking to engage your learners with CS First, computer science, that CS First platform links really well with Google Classroom. So a nice one to kind of look at, but we won't be spending too much time on that one today.
It's a great resource, though. So if you haven't seen it, folks, really recommend that to you.
So that's a kind of overview. Just to go into some of the detail for today. So originality reports is going to be a bit of my focus. Also using rubrics, bit of not terminology you necessarily hear in the lexicon of teachers in the UK and Ireland, but assessment grids, if you like. But we'll have a look at how those rubrics can be used within Classroom. And obviously teamwork in Classroom, using it as a faculty or a year group or a subject area, that kind of thing. So we'll see how we'll do with that. Okay. So just a quick jump into some of the updates. I know we talked about BigQuery to analyze data. Charlie, I know I've had some people come to me and say, what on earth is BigQuery? But I don't need you to explain maybe that one, but
we haven't got enough time. But yeah.
But what's the kind of need to know part of this for anyone sort of wondering what this brings to their experience?
So what this does, with this update in standard and plus editions, what you'll be able to do is your admins will be able to set up your domain to extract the data on usage of Google Classroom and store that data in a big database called BigQuery, and then that can be linked to an analytics dashboard in Google Data Studio using templates that are already prepared. And what this will give, it will give school leaders and middle managers lots of information around how Google Classroom is being used, what engagement is like, returns from pupils, numbers of posts in classes, lots of really rich data that helps inform and keep folk kind of in the know about all the great work that educators are doing in Google Classroom. So it surfaces all that effort that folks have been doing in their classes and makes it really visible. So it's a great addition just to keep informing school leaders, but actually those reports could equally be useful at a kind of collegiate level between teaching staff to see, be able to compare the usage between their own classes. So you might pick up some great ideas that are happening inside those Google Classrooms.
Yeah, I can see that potentially as speaking to someone about sort of being able to easily, where you're seeing great practice and understanding their use of the tools, and that can be used as something to kind of raise standards with, actually, it looks like we've got a bit of correlation between these two things. You can target your kind of quality control and improvement teams around those kind of insights. Yeah.
Absolutely. So being able just to see that activity and surface it is a really powerful thing, and available through that particular tool with BigQuery and the Data Studio templates.
Yeah, so that's one to have a look out for coming, dropping sort of soon. Later on this year, around kind of back to school time, you'll see Classroom add-ons being launched for the Teaching, Learning Upgrade and Education Plus. So that's bringing more of those third-party tools in. We had a question from John in the comments about kind of checking which ones are safe and which ones aren't. Obviously, Google can't vouch for third-party tools. However, if you follow the link that's appeared in the comments, the Chromebook App Hub does have some guidance and links for you to search for third-party tools, and it will have their security link off the bottom of that tool, so you can do some snooping into their GDPR compliance and things like that along the way. So that's add-ons coming around sort of back to school time. As we mentioned, like what the lockdown has obviously established is that teachers and students were using their mobiles to access Google Classroom through the app, which is available for Android and iOS. On Android, to begin with, there'll be better grading functionality for teachers. So where teachers are grading through Classroom and picking up insights that way through their Android device, then that will be you'll see improvements coming again around back to school time. And for the students, if they've got some written work that they want to scan and put into Classroom, then that workflow has been improved. So that'll be nice and easy for students to use their Android devices to scan written work, whatever else they've done, and get that straight into Classroom so you can see it. Both of those, by the way, will be freely available through Education Fundamentals. So if you're using Classroom, those will appear just as standard for everybody. Okay. The other thing that you'll be aware of now for Education Fundamentals, while you can't get the kind of upgraded insights through a Data Studio template, there are audit logs in the admin console, so you can see what is going on in Classroom. So that's freely available through Education Fundamentals and kind of is an audit log of what's going on. And obviously with the upgrades, you can get that insight and really pull out that data.
Yeah, and that's a really useful one. So when you get questions like, a pupil has left, has the student joined my class, or has the student left my class, your admins can now see that, and it's visible and can be interrogated in the admin console. And that's just part of fundamentals. It's something that we'll all have access to. Okay, and something coming around the back to school time will be for teachers in their classroom, in addition to stream, classwork, people and grades. An additional tab called engagement will start to appear around autumn time, which will allow you as the teacher to see their student activity in classroom, what they submitted, comments, and give you an overview. And that again will be freely available through Education Fundamentals, and just reiterates that Google is still very much committed to making sure that Education Fundamentals provides the tools that you need, as well as those deeper, more insightful tools through the upgrades. Okay, now rich text formatting has dropped. Hopefully you've all been using that. So I think it's probably a good time at this point, rather than showing you a GIF of something that exists, I think it's time to switch to an actual Google Classroom, if that's all right. So here we are. Those of you that attended or previously on the Google for Education webinars, you might remember a Mars classroom that was introduced when we were looking at collaboration. Here's that same exploration projects classroom, and you might recognize from the previous webinars that we've got the task, what you already know about Mars. We collaborated in Jamboard, and we've got a couple of group presentation assignments in there. If that's news to you, then feel free to jump back to webinar 2 at any point, and you can see how I created those. As I promised in webinar 2, when we were looking at collaboration, I said I'd go a bit deeper into some of the classroom things that we kind of touched on there. So that's what we're going to do today. So sticking with the Mars theme, I'm really keen now that we've had like the meet with the expert and we've had our group presentations to do a bit of sort of deeper thinking into what we're going to need to do to sort of survive on Mars. So I've got a Google document in my Google Drive, which is this one here. Just close down the Explore for now, a little sneak peek. So the task I'd like...
I don't understand.
Neither do I. The task that I'd like my students to do is looking at growing food on Mars. So I've got a document here. What could you grow on Mars? And I've got a little link for them to watch the film, a segment of the film, The Martian. Now, a little tip here is you'll notice that I have linked video for them to watch the video. It actually goes to a set of Google Slides. So when you click on a link to Google Slides or Docs, it will offer you this kind of little preview option. Those of you who have been watching Google I/O keenly will also notice that this integrated working smart canvas, if you like, is going to be something that you'll see rolling out to your Google Docs and Meet experience, where everything is more in one place. So look out for those updates that came out sort of yesterday and the day before. So this Google slide deck, I can open a preview, and what I like about this is it can help prevent my window is too small. There we go, it's a bit better. It can prevent the students from having to navigate away from the piece of work. So it opens this preview, and this is the first slide with my little animation in. But on slide 2, I've actually embedded a video of the Martian, which they can watch from within the document. So a little sort of hack there to allow them to kind of not navigate away from their work and engage with the task that you want them to. So there's something for you to consider. I'm now going to have to sort of debate how on earth I get to the little X to close that down. There we go, let's do that. So that's my document that I'd like them to work on. And obviously I need to assign that through Classroom, so let's do that. So I'm going to go to Classroom, click on Create, and I'm going to create assignment. Okay, so growing food on Mars. Obviously, don't forget that you can always make your classroom a little bit more engaging with an emoji. And yeah, why not just go with pizza for now? That will do. So what would I like to do? I'd like them to please open your copy of the document and complete the questions. Now also, let's just give them a couple of things, like for example, I would like them to watch the video using the preview option via the link, and remember to cite any sources you use. So that can all go in, and let's just make sure they know they need to, first of all, open your copy. Let's just give them a reminder of that. Just make it nice and bold for them. A little reminder that I'd like them to use the preview. No need to navigate out of the document. And most importantly, remember to cite any sources that they've used. Okay, let's get rid of that there, and let's add from Google Drive that document you saw a few moments ago. So little training tip, if you've got it open recently, that always helps. But if not, you can always do a quick search for food on Mars, and we can get that document up and running. It's always the way, isn't it? I've had it open like pretty much all day. Here it is, this one here, and it doesn't want to find it for me. So obviously with this, what we want them to do is do some citation. So you'll probably establish that I'm going to be using the originality reports. So just before we get to originality reports, remember that now I've got all of the documents in the whole world.
You did want to find them, Ben. It looks good though.
Let's hope it's the right one. Very exciting. Right, so we want, in this case, to make a copy for every student. As I said, I want them to get their copy. I am going to put that under the Mars topic. It's assigning to all students. We'll give them a due date of a little bit later, sort of next week. And let's add a rubric in. So I've got a rubric here, and we can share this template out with you as well. So a little tip for that, if you want to get hold of this one, is if you want to take where it says edit and replace that with copy, and you can borrow that link there. That link can be put into wherever you want it to go, and it will force a copy. And we'll put a copy link into the comments for you if you want a copy of this rubric template. So this one here is actually one I've borrowed from Fried Tech, a partner in the US that we that do some amazing work as well. So we're going to take this one and use this as our template. And obviously you can add in descriptions related to the different levels that you're asking the students to achieve for the different criteria. So let's jump back into Classroom and let's go to Rubric. And we're going to import from Sheets in this case, though you can reuse ones that you've already used in another classroom. And now it's playing along much more nicely with me, and I can add that one in. Okay, so that looks to have gone in pretty successfully. Got the different topics, etc., and we can save that. You might sometimes get this one, I found, this error, and if you just switch to descending, that tends to resolve it, and in it goes. So now we've got that rubric as a guide for the students, and I'm going to tick originality reports. So unlike some other plagiarism checkers, originality reports is student focused. So it's about the student being able to produce their best work. Therefore, what they will be able to do is run an originality report check on their work 3 times before they submit it. If you're using Education Fundamentals, then you'll have the ability to use this 5 times in a class. If you want unlimited originality reports to be used across as many classes on as many assignments as you like, then that will come with the Teaching and Learning Upgrade and also Education Plus. So I've ticked that box so that my students in my class will have the ability to run that check 3 times to make sure that their citation is up to standard and that they are correctly crediting the work that they've put in. Okay, so there's my assignment set up. Let's assign that one to the whole lot and off we go. Any queries or questions that I need to pick up, Charlie, before we jump into the student view?
So we're doing okay, I think, at the moment. What we've got, just a couple of folks asking Ben, the session is being recorded so they can replay it. So that's absolutely true. Yep, you just come back here and watch again. So that's great. I've got one question that's just on our Q&A doc, Ben, which is kind of related, I suppose. Rossin asks, just how can a teacher open a doc, slides, or Jamboard on all student Chromebooks at once?
Yeah, so there used to be an extension called Share to Classroom, which would allow you to push out any link you had open, either directly to the student Chromebooks or directly to the student's classroom. I presume it's a usage related thing, but that extension has been is no longer supported. So yes, it's something we used to use all of the time, and many of our fellow trainers would as well. It would allow you to push it out. But yes, that was a Share to Classroom extension, but that extension is sort of been deprovisioned, is no longer working. I know that there is an Add to Classroom extension, which does a similar thing, that you can search for in the Chrome web store if you want an alternative to that. But that's a third-party tool, as opposed to Share to Classroom was built by Google. I did enjoy that extension a lot. Okay, so we've got our task assigned. So let's just, I'm going to switch now to our student account. So here we are in the student view, and you'll see that they've got the previous 3 tasks and then also the one that we've set today. So they're going to open that one up. They're going to read all of the instructions carefully, obviously. If they want to, they can have a quick peek at the rubric and see what they're aiming for. What do I need to do to be distinguished in content and citation and writing? And then when they're ready, they can open up their copy of the document and get going. This is one thing I've noticed actually with some teachers who've maybe been rushed into using Classroom, is not necessarily getting the benefit of having a Google document that they can assign. They might have signed like existing file types that they've got. But this ability to push out a document, and obviously from a teacher's point of view, I can see from the very beginning what's going on with all of my student documents. I get an overview of all of them. And so I can jump in and be proactive with my support. Okay, so here is the student document. So the student obviously has the same option I did to open up the preview and watch the video. Once they've watched the video, then they can put in their answer. So what food is the astronaut growing in the film? I believe he's trying to grow potatoes. So we can put that one in. What could be grown on Mars? Use Explore to find sources to support your ideas. Okay, so the Explore tool in the bottom right of a Google document is quite a powerful sort of search button essentially. So it might be that if I put in what can be grown on Mars, I can do a search within here. Just for reference, the image search is not only safe search enabled, but it's also labeled for reuse images. So it's a nice habit to get the students into of searching within Explore, because they're, for one, less likely to come across an image that you don't want them to see. And also they'll only be using images that are labeled for reuse. So it gives you the freedom to display their work globally if you're proud of it, without any worry of kind of infringing any copyrights along the way. So let's have a look at the web searches. Tests indicate which edible plants could thrive on Mars. That seems like it would be very useful for the piece of work I'm doing. So as a conscientious student, I want to make sure I'm well informed. So let's have a look through. Oh, it looks like kale, carrot, sweet potatoes, and hops could be the option. So I'm going to copy that and I'm going to put that into my document. Let's put it in my own words. There is potential to grow. Control Shift V, by the way, if you want what you paste in to match the formatting in your document, so it doesn't come in with that kind of weird background. On Mars. But of course, that is not my work. That is the work of the article. So I'm just going to plot my cursor just at the end of the section that I've borrowed. And then if I go over to the website where I got that from, there is the option to cite as footnote. And if I click once on that, a footnote has now been added. And if we scroll down to the bottom of the page, you will see, if I scroll out a bit more, there it is. The citation is now sitting at the bottom of the page as a footnote. So that's a really powerful tool for getting those citations in easily. Through the Explore tool, there's 3 citation formats: MLA, APA, and Chicago. If you want to go a little bit more in depth into citation, so particularly if you're working with older students doing various courses that, preparing themselves to go off to university and get into good habits, then you might also want to use under tools the citation option that has been added to Google Docs fairly recently. So that citation option under tools will open up a sidebar where you can go a lot more in depth to adding citations, and you'll also see there's many more. I'll show you some more options in a moment, but there are some other citation formats you can add. So if you go to add citation, and let's say it was a website, you've got the option to add in a lot more detail about the source. And if you see here, in this one in particular, this is the same source that I cited, but I could also add this one in. So if I put in cite, you'll see that that goes into the document in a slightly different format. And there's the option to insert all of that into a bibliography. So a couple of options there to consider for citation. Just before I submit my work, there's another website here that I found, and there's a section that I wanted to borrow to support the point I was trying to make, which was the question is like, what are you going to need to take? And the answer is apparently robots need to go to Mars if you're going to survive. So robots is the answer there. And then again, I can put in my source and I can cite it. And it might be that I have to add this one a bit more manually using citations. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that uncited so you can potentially see how originality reports works. Okay, so that's the student's work. Before I submit it, I'm going to jump back into Classroom. I'm going to view this assignment because it's on the right hand side here. Because I tick that box, they have the option to run originality reports. So they can do a check before they submit it. So let's get that running. What that is going to do for the first of my 3 tries as a student is it's going to compare my document to the internet and see if anything looks similar. There is an option through the Education Plus and the Teaching and Learning upgrade where you can start to have your own comparison work. So you could internally have student submitted work that subsequent work students run originality reports on is compared to. That is only within your organisation. There's no ability to compare it to other organisations because obviously from a privacy and security point of view, that is not something that Google's can give you access to because it's you own your data and no one else is having a look at it. But you can decide to have originality reports, compare it to your own internal set of pieces of work if you want to. Okay, so it's run the report, and as a student, I can then have a quick look and see what's come up. So it says we've got one flagged passage, and you'll notice here it's saying, wait a minute, that one looks very similar to this source on the internet. So what it allows us to do, obviously, is jump back into our piece of work and put that right. So let me just make sure. So the cheating way of doing it actually is to go back in, copy that link and then open up into Explore, and we should be able to get that very same web page come up as our web searches. Here we go. So a nice easy way is to then cite that, and now we can go back in, close down that report, and we can run that again for a second time. So we can do our second check, run it again before we then submit our work, more confident than we were before that we've got our citation right and we're going to get high score from that particular aspect on the rubric.
And it is great to see this, that students can use this to self-check, to look at that and just do that double check themselves before they hand the piece of work in. And it's the right approach. We want our children, young people to be responsible for the work that they produce and have those really good habits and establish those habits as early as we can. So it's a great feature for them to be able to use and access.
Yeah, one bit of thing to be aware of it. Sometimes it will, where there's 2 sentences brought in, you might find that it doesn't think the first one's cited, but just sort of flagging that with students along the way. And obviously this will continue to improve, and just like all Classroom options, there is the option to report and give some feedback, and the team will really appreciate your look at that as you start to use it. Okay, I think assuming I'm appreciated that I have cited it there, and I can also put in a citation there if I want it to stop flagging it. But let's close that down and let's go back and let's submit our piece of work.
Quick question there, Ben. Can you cite a web page that's nothing to do with a quote?
I mean, you can cite whatever you like, wherever you like, either whether that's through the citer's footnote in the Explore or whether you just manually add that through the citation tool. So you can do it as you wish.
Right.
So also the citation tool allows you to build a bibliography that can be inserted at the bottom. If I just quickly show that option again, actually. So tools, citation. Oh, I've submitted my work, so I only have view access, which is we know how it works. So I will have to wait a few moments for my teacher to return it, and I can show you that citation option as well. Okay, so let's have a look. So back here, you can see that I can see that student 30 has submitted it. So let's have a quick look at the kind of grading process before we jump into some of the other stuff as well. I don't know to what extent people are using this grading function themselves. If you want to add in the comments, kind of sort of on a scale of 1 to 5, how often you use the grading interface. 1 being it's not something you use, you bypass it, and 5 being you use it all the time. It'd be good to get a sort of sense of roughly where this part of the process is with people. So I've got now my sort of grading interface. I can switch between students really, really easily. I can also list them in different ways if I need to. Just for reference, I know last time we talked about feedback for Google Classroom. I requested that you could sort by first name and last name. And I even got an email back from Google saying, Ben, we've onboarded your feature. I feel like that would mean that I am the only person that asked for it and they just did it for me. But the reality is that lots of people asked for that. And along with them, it was aggregated together. Cool. Okay, lots of range in the who's using it. So some people not at all, some people a lot. It's really interesting to see the range. Right, so let's have a look. So first of all, I might want to put in a little bit of feedback on here of maybe it's please use full sentences. And you might have noticed the autocorrect or sort of autocomplete going there as well. Just in case you haven't spotted it, same as Gmail, if you press tab, you can get that autocorrect. Obviously, with any comments that you think you're going to be making again and again and again, don't forget that if you've made that comment once, you can go to the 3 dots and you can add it to your comment bank. So yeah, I'd like to add please use full sentences to my comment bank. And what that means now is that in the comment bank over here, you have got your comment ready to go and you can either copy it in, or if, for example, I wanted to give that feedback again, if I go to comment and type in please, it will start to list all of the comments in my comment bank which kind of match what I'm typing. Let's just see what I've got for citation as well. Oh, I slipped into Moat, not the aim for today, but let me just come out of that for a second. So this one here, we've got some good citation, so I can add that one in. Let's have a go at that. There it goes. That's what I was waiting for. See it auto sort of bringing out my good citation from my comment bank as well. So you can go through and add that. And obviously once you're done, you can then add a grade. You'll see here that it's indicated to me as the teacher that there's one flagged passage. So the nice thing about that is rather than having to read through every single part and where you get a bit suspicious about the wording suddenly changing drastically and the level of writing changing quite drastically, Originality reports will allow you to go, oh look, it says there's a flagged passage. You as the teacher can just quickly open that up and have a look. In this case, I can see that actually this part is all cited here, so I'm happy with that. I can make a bit of professional judgment on that one. And then it means we can jump back in. Oh, pardon me. We can jump back in and we can finish off grading that student's piece of work. So content-wise, I can give them a score quickly on my rubric. Citation, I'm pretty impressed with that. The writing's not too bad. Grammar's fairly good, and so on and so forth. And that's how you can provide that grading. There's also the option to add a private comment. And when you're happy, we can return that back to the student. And you'll see that it's taken the overall score and converted that out of 100 because that was my default on that particular assignment.
How great is that, Ben, in terms of a teacher thinking about their workload, thinking about kind of reducing the bureaucracy that teachers have to go through at times? How great is that how quickly you were able to grade that with that rubric in place and just be able to click down see that an action. I think, in terms of teachers and coping with their workload, this is a huge step forward. It's a great
Yeah, and
advantage.
it was something that sort of a lot of my colleagues from my previous schools sort of found that process did give them time back for planning. And if there's anything teachers need after this year, it's a bit of time back in their pocket, because it's been quite the year for everyone. So hopefully that gives you a few ideas as well. You'll notice that I've returned that piece of work, so I've got it back as the student, which means here I can show you the insert bibliography option as well. I really wish I had not had my cursor there, so let's just move down to an obvious place to put a bibliography, which is towards the end, and you'll see that has built out a bibliography automatically into the end of my document. So maybe going back to the question we had earlier about the citation, obviously depending on the piece of work that you're doing, the scale of the citation that you feel you need. I know when I was doing my master's in education, I would have loved this to have existed, because it wasn't always my strongest point, my bibliography. Okay. So a little bit of an insight there into that process, both grading and obviously the originality reports and the rubrics. So I will take a pause at that point, just to see if there's any other questions coming in before we sort of move into the final part of today's webinar.
No, Ben, we're all good. We're up to date with the questions that we've had. I haven't missed any there. So, yep, okay to move on.
Cool. Okay, so just to sort of wrap up the other things that we've talked about, originality reports is available in over 15 languages now. So obviously, if you are using it to teach Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, etc., that can also be used in, I think, particularly maybe we're talking A-level hires, where you might want to use that alongside your language teaching. So that's through the fundamentals. You don't need any upgrade to get the additional languages. You do need the upgrade, the Teaching and Learning Upgrade or Education Plus, if you want unlimited originality reports, rather than just the sort of 5 per course, which you get with fundamentals. Obviously, just as we're talking about Classroom, just a reminder that later on in the year, there's going to be an improved integration between Google Meet and Classroom. So that's going to make sure that teachers have host access to the Meet, and the right people can get in, and you can be even more certain that the wrong people can't. So that's coming later on this year as a continued improvement to Meet. And obviously yesterday, many of you will have seen that Meet's going to integrate even more closely with like docs and slides and sheets to allow you to collaborate as well. So just before I get to the closing, there was one other bit I wanted to have a look at. I'm aware time-wise, I don't need to labour this point. But we talked about teamwork in Classroom. So I just want to show you a concept that might be useful if you are an individual using Classroom and you're looking to try and sort of build the usage across your school or across your year group or your faculty area. And that is the idea of creating a central Google Classroom for your subject area or for your year group, where you and your colleagues all build out a Google Classroom. So if you create one particular classroom with no students in, add all of your colleagues as teachers, you can build up all of the assignments just like you would normally. But the beauty is that when someone goes to build a new classroom, that when they do that, let's say they're doing their own exploration classroom with a different class, that central repository, Google Classroom, is there for them to pick out all of the relevant tasks. So almost using Google Classroom as your kind of curriculum base is a way that we're seeing sort of schools support people who maybe haven't made that transition to Google Classroom quite as easily as others. So they can benefit from the assignments that you've already made. So here in my completely empty classroom, I can go to create, I can go to reuse post, and I can dip in to any other classroom that you want to have a go and visit. So, the more classrooms you're a teacher of, the more you'll have to choose from. Let's go into economics and see what's sitting in that one. Bad choice, Ben. Very little. Let's go into this one and see what's sitting there. So here we go. If you wanted to take dinosaurs at the South Pole, you can reuse that one, and it will build that with all of the information ready to go. And you can make a few edits, for example. Remove information, add any additional resources you want to. And when you're ready, you can click on assign or just schedule that for another time. So that idea of like working together as a team, building your assignments in one classroom where you're just teachers, and then having that to use in other classrooms is a nice way forward. We have confirmation of that from someone I presume is already using it. Reuse post is the best feature ever. There you go. Not my words.
Yeah, it's a great.
Jay Whitaker.
Yeah, it's a great feature. And we've got some others that are doing just the same. So super handy in terms of a feature. And yeah, absolutely agree with that. And also that idea of teachers sharing classrooms as well, which is what you're showing there, Ben. But colleagues just working together to share resources and share the load. It's great. It's just a great feature. Love it.
Awesome. Obviously, like Classroom, there's lots you can look at in Classroom. So if you want to sort of jump into the Q&A doc, if you've got any other questions that maybe feel like a bit more in depth, then please do. We are aware there are a few unanswered questions from previous sessions in the Q&A doc. We're just sort of reaching out to get some kind of definitive answers to some of those. So if you want to sort of bookmark that Q&A document, that might be a useful thing to come back to. And as we've said, this is the YouTube link you're watching this on can be passed on and passed around to any of your colleagues or for you to rewatch. So feel free to go back and have another look at those at any point. I don't know if you've already put this one up, but the use of a classroom for staff training is a great way to sort of help people get used to using it. They see it from the student point of view. They get used to being in Google Classroom. Yes, there's a good caveat there about forms, making new copies of forms, and just sort of being aware of that as you reuse posts with that. And what have we got from Charlotte? We also use as for rubrics. We've got Google Classroom just for rubrics in English, for example. It's a great example of how you can kind of save everyone a bit of time. Because I know that one of the feature requests from a lot of teachers is for the comment bank to be something that could be shared. So like the whole English department has access to a kind of standard comment bank to sort of align the feedback that the children are getting. So that kind of fits in with that one as well. Amazing. Okay, we've come to the end of today's session, but please do keep the questions coming. Just as a reminder, so we're now 4 of the webinars into our 6. Next week, I'm going to be passing back over to Charlie to talk about managing devices of various kinds through the admin console. And then we've got one more after that. What can they look forward to in the managing devices session?
So lots of great new things to share in the managing devices session. We'll be taking another look at how you manage your Chrome devices and the great tools that are there to make that really simple and straightforward for admins. We'll also look at some of the new features around managing iOS and Android devices. And the really interesting bit that we're going to close with at next week's session is managing Windows devices and your students being able to sign in to their Windows device with their Google account that you use across all your other devices. So we'll touch on that. We'll show a little bit, give a bit of information about that, and I'll demo a few things from the admin console as well. So really neat session last week for those who want to kind of get that more kind of technical update and some of those great new features.
Awesome, yeah. And then obviously sort of the relevant place to finish off is that, well, we obviously a lot of people have been sort of using Classroom and Meet more because of remote learning, but we're going to look at Google Workspace beyond remote learning and what that can look like for those of you that maybe have used it more so over the last 12 months and are transitioning back into the classroom and thinking about embedding the use of Google Workspace across all of your school, all your teachers and that kind of thing as well. Okay, one final question from Karen. We will put the rubric in that Q&A doc, that's no problem, and I'll have a look at the other questions as well. Thank you for adding those as we go. Great stuff. Hopefully see you on the next 2 webinars, everyone. Thank you for joining us to sort of learn a little bit more about Google Workspace for Education and the different choice, control and flexibility that you've got through the new additions. Remember to reach out to partners if you want to find out a little bit more about the trial options and getting some pricing for those. And just leaves us to say, please, please, please let us know your feedback. There's potential for more sessions like this, and your feedback will really help us define what we need to do and what would be really useful to know. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of the afternoon, and we'll see you next week. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, folks. Well done, Ben.